What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode of the Big Five Pod. Listen, we had also episode number 24, but we had a hell of a weekend, and we're going to get into it today, and we're very excited for that. I am, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello, and of course, next to me, Jake Copestick. How we doing?
Doing well. We did have a nice weekend. We had a nice Sunday doing another doubleheader. We were at LaSalle St. Joe's, and we were at the Core Center for Temple Houston. That was a great game. So we'll have all that in the episode. But yeah, it was a nice day for us doing a doubleheader on Sunday.
Yeah, we were all over the place. We were all over the city of Philadelphia, so it was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Definitely really fun to go to two games, two great environments. We're gonna get into that in a little bit, but very, very exciting stuff. And a lot of great basketball. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, we're gonna go over the two Penn games that were played. One on Friday, one on Saturday evening. Penn beating Columbia and Cornell in these two. They beat Columbia by 9, which was, I think, a little less than a lot of people were expecting. I think we were both expecting them to be a little more, but it's a few possessions still. And then they ended up beating Cornell 92-86, which was definitely a huge win for them and something that we had discussed going into this episode. As if they were to win this game, it would set them up nicely after what they had dealt with earlier in the Ivy League season. So some highlights from these two. I'm going to kind of combine these to save a little bit of time. We're going to talk about them both. Jordan Dingle, 52 combined points in this one, which is just pretty good. It's pretty good, I'd
Yeah.
say. Uh, they shot almost 52% against Cornell and almost 48% from three. So that was a really, really great shooting game. They didn't shoot that great against Columbia. Hence the only a single digit victory against a not good team. 27 combined turnovers, which honestly isn't awful for them. It's definitely not good in general, but it's not awful for them. And another thing I wanted to point out was Clark Slackert. Another rough game against Columbia. He did have 13, though, against Cornell, 3 of 7 from the field. So he bounced back a little bit, which is, I guess, encouraging, but still concerning regarding his play coming back from that injury. I don't know if he's, speculating here. Maybe he's still a little bit banged up and they kind of rushed him back because they weren't doing great when he was out. Nonetheless, though, 2 Ivy League wins, one against a really good Cornell team, and sets them up nicely here to be able to make a run again to that top 4 of the Ivy League tournament. So, what were your takeaways from Penn's 2 games this weekend?
So mainly from the Cornell game, which is the one that I watched the most film of. Yeah, we talked about Slacker and his struggles scoring the ball, but he was able to score in 13, like you said, in this game. And not only did all 9 players score in this game that played for Penn, but every single starter was in double figures. Lucas Monroe filled up the stat sheet, 12 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists. Nick Spinoso, 10 points, 5 boards, 6 assists. 21 assists on 31 made baskets, which is really impressive. We know that Cornell wants to push the pace. They're going to press to be a frenetic game, a lot of up and down. And they were able to take advantage of that. Not necessarily beating the press all the way down the floor, but they could get the ball across the court quickly, get a touch inside. They got some backdoor cuts. They cut very nice. They moved very well without the ball. So offensively, they were humming, which is great. And even if Clark Slacker's not going to have a huge game, this is a good game from him with 13 points. The others were able to carry the load around him, and this is a very balanced team effort. Defensively, I thought they did pretty well. Now Cornell scores a lot of points, I think, but 13 to 42 from 3 point land in this. But had they hit a bunch more, we're talking about a different game. But to kind of keep them at bay in that area is huge because we know they like to take a lot of threes. So it was a good win all around, a 2-0 weekend for them. And hey, now they find themselves in third place in the Ivy League, right in that top 4 where they want to be if they want to play in March. So it was a great weekend for them. In the span of week and a half, they're from maybe the bottom half of the Ivy League, and now they're in a top 4 spot. So it was a great weekend all around for them. But that Cornell game, very balanced team effort and a really good win for them. They had smoked in that last 10 minutes, and they went to Penn had to play. So really good weekend for Penn. How they find themselves in the top half of the league.
Yeah, I mean, cannot understate or cannot overstate enough rather how important that Cornell win was. Because like you said, now they're in the top 4 of the Ivy League. If they continue to be in the top 4, they're going to be able to play for a chance at the tournament, which is all they've been wanting to do all year. And all we've been expecting them to do is at least have a chance to do that. And they weren't in that position for the first month or so of the Ivy League season, but now they're really starting to get into gear. And it's good to see. Obviously there could still be improvements, but it's exciting to see them actually play to the level that we thought that they could play coming into the season. So good for them. Hopefully they can continue. They're not playing this coming work week, as we'll call it, but this weekend they've got a game coming up that we'll get to in our next episode. But definitely a good weekend this past weekend from Penn. Unfortunately, not a good weekend from the Villanova Wildcats this past weekend. They once again competed with a really good team in the Big East Conference and fell ultimately in the end, 66-61 at Creighton. Some highlights in this one: Eric Dixon, 20 and 9 on 7 of 18 from the field. Justin Moore back in double figures coming off his injury, 13 points on 4 of 11 from the field. Caleb Daniels, 12 points on 4 of 8. This is an interesting one. 0 bench points for the Wildcats in this one. Not great. Not what you're going to want to see. Both teams shot under 40% as well. So, as you can imagine, it was kind of an uglier game. It was a lower scoring game, only 127 points in a total for this one. Listen, we talked about this last episode that they always compete with these tougher teams, but they can't find a way to pull it out, even with them being fully healthy for the first time all year. Obviously last week when Justin Moore came back was the first time that they were fully healthy. But it's just, I think the only way to really describe it is the season's lost, right?
Yeah, I feel like we've been at the point where it's Big East tournament or bust for a while now, but we just keep singing the same song over and over with them. Like they're through 33, 35 minutes, like they're very good in these games. Their offense, they just can't seem to find it at the end. Over the last 5 minutes, they go in an over 4 minute scoring drought. And if it wasn't for a big time three from Eric Dixon, they wouldn't have scored for the last 5 minutes. So offensively, it's just killer every single time. We've said this over and over and over again. Pretty much every close loss is because of offense late in the game. Defensively, very low scoring game, and that's going to happen. You talk about Eric Dixon. We believe it was 7 of 18 from the field. He's going up against Ryan Kalkbrenner, who has a size, length on him, is the best shot blocker in the Big East. That's not surprising to see, but he really battled. I got to give him credit. We always talk about how Villanova's a better team when they play through Eric Dixon, and he had some really tough buckets and ones late in this game that whenever they were in a funk offensively, he was able to get them out. He hits a big three with 30 seconds left, and then unfortunately they fouled on the other end. Creighton was in the 1-and-1. They hit both free throws, and then Caleb Daniels got the ball picked from him. Creighton goes down. They hit 2 more free throws, and then the play, I don't really know if it was supposed to go to Dixon, but they drew up a play for a 3 for him. And it was just a very, very tough shot. It was an air ball, but he's gliding to his left. He had to get it up in a hurry. It just wasn't a great. I'm not going to fault him for air ball. It was a very, very tough shot. Defensively, they really hung in this game. I got to give them credit. They did a pretty good job, pretty much the whole game of keeping Creighton out of the paint. Trey Alexander had a good game, knocking down some threes, but that offense at the end that just continues to kill them. They were down 10 in the second half, and they were able to come back, and they were able to take the lead at one point with under a minute left. It's just they can't get consistent buckets late, and that's what continues to kill them. Something I just want to touch on. Nova's a team that wants to shoot a lot of threes. They are sub 200 in 3-point percentage, yet they're 8th in 3-point field goals to field goals attempted, which means that they have a very, very high percentage of their total field goal attempts that are threes. They like to shoot a bunch of them, and that's reflective in the stats. And they are 27th in terms of the percentage of their points that are threes. So that's all great when you can make them, but if you're sub 200, it just doesn't seem like a good way to run your offense. And we said it time and time again on this show. They're way better when they go through Eric Dixon. Although he had a very tough assignment at Ryan Kalkbrenner, he got him some big buckets when they needed it. They just got to continue to follow that and not only play through him scoring, but he's able to kick it out too and make some nice reads. Brandon Slater had a big 3 when they kicked it to Caleb Daniels. Arthur Kaluma went down to help, and he was able to kick out. So they just got to keep playing through Eric Dixon. When they're in a funk and they're gunning threes, just make sure you get the ball inside. But here we are again. It's a tough place to play out in Omaha, and they just fell short because, again, the offense just sputtered when they really needed it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The one thing that really gets me about this Nova team is that, sure, they're not as talented as last year's team or 2018 or 2016 or any of those teams in between. There's still a lot of talent on this team. Eric
Absolutely.
Dixon's a really good player, like you had just mentioned. Caleb Daniels is a good shot maker and, was the leader of this. Him and Dixon were the leader of this offense, obviously, before Whitmore came back and also Justin Moore. But even with them, they've been They've been more than solid. Whitmore's going to be a lottery pick. Justin Moore's just coming back, so I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass. But, I know their bench isn't crazy deep, but this is still a pretty, at least top-heavy, talented team. And the fact that they can't figure out a way to win these kind of games, it's not just the Creighton game. They've had a bunch of games that they've had really close games. I mean, you talk about Providence, Xavier. They
Marquette
played
twice.
Marquette twice. That was one I was just thinking of. Yep. Even UConn was tough earlier in the year. Like those were all 2 to 3 possession games at least. All games that they could have won. I'm not saying they're going to win all those games. That's unsustainable. They're not the Minnesota Vikings here. Let's get that out of the way. But even if they win 3 more of those games, we're talking about a completely different Villanova team here. So it's just frustrating to see. And like at this point, like I just think it's a wrap for them. It's Big East tournament or bust, like you said. Obviously, they're not going to make the tournament as that large or anything like that. But could they potentially steal a bid? I doubt it, but they do have that talent at the top to be able to make a run. So we can evaluate more after the season if it does end before Selection Sunday. But that's disappointing to say the least from these Villanova Wildcats. All right, let's go to the two games that we went to. We'll go to the first one on Sunday afternoon. LaSalle traveling very, very, very far to St. Joe's and beating them at Hagan Arena, 73-65. Definitely not a result that either of us were expecting, but we're going to dive into this real quick. Obviously, like I said, we were there, but some of the things that I noticed in some of the stats, very back and forth game. I was saying that the entire time when we were in the stands. It was just at one point, especially middle of the second half, extremely entertaining. Eric Reynolds and Josh Nickelberry were going shot for shot. It was a sight to see. Speaking of those two, Nickelberry 16 points and 6 of 11 from the field, his best game in quite some time. Eric Reynolds 15 points and 5 of 16. At one point he just couldn't miss, and then they stopped giving him the ball. Very strange. St. Joe's 24% from 3. Could not buy a bucket from beyond the arc. It was actually really tough to see. And another thing that was really tough to see for the Hawks was that LaSalle out-rebounded them 45-31. And not just that, offensive rebounding, they out-rebounded St. Joe's 16-9. And it just seemed like every single LaSalle miss was just getting corralled by someone in a yellow jersey. It was really a sight to see. And last thing, St. Joe's only had 7 turnovers in this one, and LaSalle 13. So not a crazy turnover game from these two. Surprising to see. Like I said, it was just every time LaSalle missed, it seemed like they were getting their own board, and that led to a lot of second chances. And St. Joe's could just never overcome that and their poor shooting performance from beyond the arc. It was tough for the Hawks, man. It was really, really tough for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I look back at the first meeting that I was at Tom Gola Arena for not too long ago, and St. Joe's was 11-22 from 3-point. Still turned the ball over 22 times, which was by a sizable margin. So I not only look at the poor 3-point shooting and the poor rebounding that St. Joe's had, but how about 5 of 13 from the free throw line? That was where it killed them for me, because you look, they missed 8 free throws. They lost this game by 8 points. Even if you don't make them all, you still give you a chance to tie this game 10 to overtime or win and stay within striking distance. So this was a different LaSalle team, definitely than the first time. Great effort from them on the boards. Another guy I want to highlight, 7 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists from Dayshawn Shepard. He continues to play very well and to carve out a role coming off the bench for them. So he knocked down a 3 right before the half. And this is all around a good offensive effort by LaSalle. And this is another team that's kind of sputtered down the stretch in some games offensively. Josh Nickelberry, 11 points in the second half. Some really key buckets for him late, off the dribble, off the catch, getting to his spots. That was good to see them close out another game, because in the GW game that they won, they also shot the ball very well down the stretch and secured a win for themselves. So that's two good wins in a row, scoring the ball when they really need it from them. But the rebounding killed them. 16 offensive rebounds for LaSalle, especially when they needed it. And then I guess a questionable last play here. This happened literally right in front of us. Khalil Brantley's got the ball. He's being defended. They call for a double team from Louis Bleachmore, who shoots right up. He's literally in Khalil Brantley's line of vision, comes up the double. Brantley just crosses over the other side, finds Dayshawn Shepard for a layup. And that's what kind of sealed the game if it wasn't already. So another thing to point out here, Lynn Greer played 25 minutes, 4 of 10 in this game. he might have been hurt. He really didn't play much in the second half, and especially down the stretch. That's something to keep an eye on as we talk about their next game that they're going to play. Overall, here, rebounding, the poor free throw shooting from St. Joe's, but also that really critical late game offense from LaSalle got some buckets when they really needed it. That's what got him a win here. I thought St. Joe's was going to win. I think you did as well. They had been on a tear as of late, but it was a good win from LaSalle, a totally different team than I saw at Tom Goal Arena not too long ago. That's not 2 in a row for the Explorers, so good for them after losing 5 straight.
Yeah, definitely great for them. They, like you said, they bounced back after kind of a brutal stretch there for them. And for St. Joe's, I mean, now it's 5 out of 7, which is still really good. They just can't lose their next game, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes here, because then that will, start more of a downward spiral that we don't want. Also, real quick, I want to give a shout out to our guy, Charles Coleman. 8 points in this one. Did not really play in the second half, which is weird because he kind of kept them in that game in the first half. Some timely buckets, some rebounds. It's a sight to see, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I think
I
that was
can't
the first
answer.
time I heard somebody's name get chanted in Hagan Arena like that, at least when I've been to a game there. And he really kept the minute. But yeah, no, good on you for saying that because he deserved his flowers. Played very well in that first half and really kept them in striking distance in the first half when LaSalle was playing well and kind of started to build a lead. So good on you for doing that. I should have given him his flowers. So thank you.
Hey, if I didn't know if you were going to before me, but I knew before we signed off on this game, I had to give Charles Coleman his flowers. But also, real quick, I just want
Absolutely.
to say that was my first time at Hagan Arena. Very cool environment. It was a packed house. I guess LaSalle fans and St. Joe's fans being there. I guess you're gonna be able to fill more seats in the same city. Although the Big Five doubleheader didn't really do that. But then again, this is on a weekend. But anyway, it was a very cool environment. Definitely enjoyed my time there, and we'll be back there. So. Shout out to St. Joe's for hosting that one. All right, last game of the weekend to go over, and this is an interesting one, a disappointing one. Temple falling to Houston 81-65 at the Liacouras Center. I'll actually take the lead on this one because we were both at the game. I did have the pleasure of covering it, so I had a good angle on this. So I just want to I'll go over some notes I had here. Listen, that first half was amazing. They were making everything from 3, especially. I think it was 9 of 17. They were from beyond the arc. And I saw you at halftime, and I was like, I don't know if it's sustainable. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's sustainable. I
you were
mean,
right.
Temple, they're a team that can make a lot of threes and definitely take a lot of threes, but they're also a team that loves to get to the line and thrives to get into the line. And they didn't do that at all. And Caleb Battle, especially, was making some tough shots. He had one that he looked like he was behind the backboard almost in the first half, which was insane. I knew it wasn't sustainable, and unfortunately, I was right. He had Caleb Battle though 24 points on 6 of 12 from the field. Jamil Reynolds and Zach Hicks each had 11, so that was some of their offense for them. But they were up 4 at halftime. Could have had 6, but Damian Dunn missed the front end of a 1-and-1, and Houston ended up getting the ball and they didn't score. But Temple was up 4 at the half. And then things just started to go south. I believe Houston went on at least a 10-0 run to start the half. Temple didn't score for the first 7 minutes of the second half. It was just they just ratcheted up the defensive intensity. I mean, they're a championship team. This was their showing of that in this one. They slowed Caleb in the second half. And I think that their defensive pressure in the second half wore them down, not just offensively, but also defensively. And I actually asked Coach McKee about this. So listen here to what he said about this in the press conference. Coach, would you say that their defensive pressure in the second half, it really seemed like they turned it up? Do you think that led to your guys being not just more tired on the offensive end and getting open looks, but more tired on the defensive end and letting them get open looks on the other end?
No, we didn't. I thought they turned their intensity up. It's more about just making the plays. We wasn't like staring at those guys and watching them take shots. Again, you get caught in rotation sometimes, and it's how it happens. You can't plug up all the holes, and we just didn't do a good enough job. We didn't react fast enough as we normally do, and let's give them credit. I mean, they got good individual players, good shooters, and they had to change their rotation a little bit to match up against what we were doing defensively, where they put in a couple other shooters other than having those big guys in there in the game. So, and that's game plan. It worked for us in the first half, and it didn't so much in the second half.
Again, that was Coach McKee after the game on Houston's defensive pressure. But like I said, it was just tough sledding for them in the second half, and they showed that they're a championship level team. And I don't think this is indictment on Temple. I still think they're a really good team. I think that they're gonna play some good basketball down the stretch in the American here, but they just ran into a buzzsaw, and I know they beat them in Houston a few weeks ago, but this was more of what we were expecting. But I'm glad that they showed heart. They definitely battled no matter what. Pun slightly intended. And I just want to give a shout out to, before I toss it to you, to all the Temple fans. That place was packed. I believe it was a sellout, and the only other time that I had seen it sold out was the UCF game in 2019, Shiz Austin Jr.'s senior night and Fred Dunphy's last home game as Temple coach, which was against a nationally ranked UCF team. So shout out to Temple fans, and Kelvin Sampson even said after the game too that Temple students, Temple fans get an A in this one because they really showed out. But that's the end of my spiel. What did you think for this one?
So yeah, I want to echo what you said there about the fans showing up. That was the probably the best atmosphere I'd ever been at for a Temple game. Now, because I'm not a student anymore, I had to sit up by Temple's basket, but that was all right. It was an awesome team there. It was very loud. A lot of people were there. Besides the 2019 or 2020 Villanova game and then the Villanova game this year, that was as crowded as I've seen. I think that was the most packed I'd ever seen. That was awesome. Unfortunately, Caleb Battle said in the press conference after, it sucks that we couldn't get the win because that's probably the only time we'll ever see. Disappointing because they are playing pretty well in conference, just second in the American. And I would hope people still show up like that. But getting to the game here, they're making everything. The place was loud. They went up 4 at halftime. Kind of felt like the air got sucked out of the building just a tiny bit. Damian Dunn goes to the free throw line with a couple seconds left in the first half, misses the front end of a 1-on-1. If he makes 2, they go up 6 at half. And I mean, still, even if he made those free throws, didn't seem like it mattered. That was as good of a second half as I've seen anybody play this year. That was an outstanding second half from Houston. Offensively, now this is kind of on Temple a little bit. They had so many open guys in the pick and roll right underneath the basket. Nobody slid over to help. They weren't reacting quick enough, like McKee said in his post-game presser. Got so many easy looks at the basket. And then defensively, I thought something that Kelvin Sampson said was interesting. He said that in the pick and roll, when they had the big step up, they kind of had him hold the line of scrimmage, so to speak. Keep his ground, have the guard chase from behind, and force a quick decision from the guards. And it ended up in a lot of deflections, a lot of turnovers from the Temple guards. Unfortunately, Caleb Battle and Damian Dunn combined for 9 turnovers in this one. They already get some runouts, get some easy buckets. Defensively, they didn't allow really many 3-point attempts, at least the quality ones at the basket. They started to double Jamil Reynolds, like I had talked about in our last episode. Not that he committed any turnovers, but they didn't allow him to get underneath the basket. They didn't allow him to back down anybody and get some buckets in close. So they got the ball out of his hands. And they were just flying around, covering ground, not allowing open threes. It was really a spectacular, almost flawless half from Houston. That being said, it's not a bad loss if you're Temple. No one's going to fault you for losing this team, especially if you're going to split the regular season series. But offensively, they made 9 threes. I don't think anyone's done that. After, like you said, it just went downhill from there. It wasn't sustainable. They weren't able to really generate any quality looks for the most part. And I want to point out here from Houston, Darius Walker, 23 points, 8 of 12 from the field, knocked down 4 threes. 6 boards and 3 steals. He was very active with his hands and passing lanes, and the pick and roll was covering well. Really a spectacular game from him, and showed why he can be a lottery pick as well. So I feel like we forgot maybe how good Houston was because Temple had beaten them, and then they were up at halftime at their place. But they can win a championship. They can absolutely do it. Final Four is being played in Houston this year, so it would be a very short bus ride from them if they make it far. And I think they will. I think they still have as good a chance as anybody to cut the nets down, but this wasn't even really so much about Temple, and yeah, they were committing some turnovers, but this was just a spectacular championship half from Houston. That's why they're now number 2 in the country. They were number 3 at the time, but what a terrific turnaround from them to come out of the locker room and really shut this game down and leave no doubt and walk out of league court. Great first half from Temple, but Houston showed everybody why they are as good as advertised here. So no shame in losing.
No shame at all. And they just got smothered. they just got smothered in the second half. A couple things you mentioned though. Jarris Walker was unbelievable, just absolutely unbelievable. He was the best player on the floor on Sunday night. It was a sight to see, and yeah, I mean Calvin Sampson said in his press conference, like you said, that they were trying to hold the line, and it really really worked. And the other thing was that it just like Temple's bigs, especially later in the second half, were they were playing a lot of like help and recover defense, which can work against some teams, but it can't work against this Houston team. They were just getting exposed. Houston shot 72% in the second half, 18 out of 25 from the field. And they were getting all these open looks under the basket because Temple's bigs were coming out to try to help on guards driving, and they just had bigs open under the basket to put it in. So it was unfortunate because they did play a really, really good first half, and obviously they beat them down in Houston, but not an indictment, like I said, on this Temple team at all.
No,
So
not at all.
we're gonna move on though. We're gonna move on to the upcoming games of this week, and they are all on Wednesday. So jam-packed Wednesday in Big Five land. Though the Quakers are off this week, like I mentioned. So just the 4 teams playing. So we're gonna go over them right now. First, we have an A10 matchup and a team that I think we both know and love, but haven't really talked about them a lot this year. The Bonnies. Sal's traveling up to the Bonnies Wednesday at 7:00 p.m. to take on St. Bonaventure. Bonnies are 152 in KenPom, 111th in defensive efficiency. So not too bad defensively. 316th in 2-point percentage. They don't really shoot too well from inside the arc. One thing they do well, however, is they are 6th in opponent 3-point percentage. So they do not let up a lot of threes, which could be an issue for the Salle team that isn't great at shooting three anyway. They're also 340th in bench minutes, the St. Bonaventure team. So they rely heavily on their starting lineup. This should be an interesting one. The Salle coming off a really good win against the rival. Bonaventure's not bad. I just based on the matchup that I'm seeing with these numbers and everything, I think I'm gonna have to go with St. Bonaventure here. Just because LaSalle, though they've been shooting a lot better, and I will give them credit for that, absolutely. Overall, still not a great shooting team, especially with this Bonaventure team that is pretty good defensively and doesn't allow a lot of 3-pointers. If they can get, if their starters can't get too tired, and maybe they get a little bit of bench points here from St. Bonaventure, I think it could definitely be a wrap. But overall, I think I'm going to go with Bonnies in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bonnies as well. No synopsis of their team. Oh, shocker. Like you said, they don't play the bench much. If you watch them the last 2 years, they didn't play the bench much either. They were pretty sure dead last both years in bench points. They had 5 very good starters. Kyle Lofton, who's now at Florida, Jaron Holmes, and Ochun Ochuni, who are at Iowa State. Jalen Attaway is now, I believe, playing in the G League. He decided to pursue a professional career. And Dominic Welch is down in Alabama. So all those guys leave. They returned 0 minutes on last year's team. I was actually at LaSalle last year. It was right after New Year's. They were playing Bonaventure. Bonaventure was coming off a COVID pause that I believe is 25 days. It was nearly a month. They go on the road to LaSalle. This game went to overtime. The bench played 3 minutes in that game. It's just not what they do there. But for what it's worth, I think Mark Schmidt did a really good job of bringing guys in. He had to utilize the transfer portal, losing all that experience. He had to get guys that he knew that could play. So he brings in Kyrell Luke from Holy Cross. He brings in Darrell Banks III from last year's Cinderella St. Peter's, who's their leading scorer. Chad Benning from Morgan State, Moses Flowers from Hartford, and Mid Hill from Fairleigh Dickinson, who's from Philadelphia. So he brings in a lot of guys, has some freshmen as well, but really needed to hit that portal, at least get some experience. And he's, in my opinion, he's probably the best X and O's coach maybe in this league. He's one of the best in the country. Watch specifically after timeouts in this game. He's going to draw up some sets to give him very easy baskets. I saw last year when I was at LaSalle. But you mentioned they're very good in 3-point defense. They played a very slow tempo. That's what they want to do. They're going to play good half-court offense, very good sets. He's a terrific basketball mind, Mark Schmidt. He's a great coach. And to me, what makes a great coach is even when you don't have a ton of talent, how can you get the most out of them? How can you squeeze every ounce out of that team? And this team's won 3 in a row. EVCU, Dayton, I believe they're 3rd right now in the A10. That, to me, that's what makes a great coach. Mark Schmidt's doing it again. John Rothstein's little moniker about Mark Schmidt is Mark Schmidt, more with less. that's exactly what he's doing this year. So I'm going to take the Bonnies. LaSalle hasn't won in their last 3 trips going up to the Riley Center there. So I'm going to take St. Bonaventure because a lot of people think they were picked 10th in the preseason rankings, and here they are, third. Mark Schmidt's that good of a coach, having to go up there as well. It's a pretty far trip to Western New York, right? Just north of the Pennsylvania border. So I'll take the Bonnies here. Just a tough place to play. You're going up against the hell of a basketball coach.
Yeah, he's a great basketball mind, like you said, and you were breaking this down for me when we were sitting in traffic on City Avenue, getting into the St. Joe's LaSalle game on Sunday. So I got to hear about this already, which I was very excited about. And also, I did know Mark Schmidt leading those St. Bonaventure teams last year and the year before. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a tough one for LaSalle. So we'll see what happens up there in Western New York. Moving on, we're going to go from up in Western New York to all the way down to Dallas, where Temple's traveling to SMU Wednesday at 8 o'clock. This SMU team has been a pretty good team in the AAC in the last few years. Not as much this year. 190th in Ken Palm. They are 313th in effective field goal percentage. And then I brought back one of my favorite notes. A lot of red. Whole lot of red on offense. And not a ton great on defense either, but specifically on offense, whole lot of red. This is not a very efficient team on offense. And Temple is going to look to be bouncing back off after a tough, I would say slightly emotional loss to Houston, because they kind of just got broken in the second half. It was a game that definitely were in and thought they could win, and it didn't go well for them. And this is a team that they are better than, and I am expecting them to go into SMU and beat them. I think they definitely can. Not that they should take any team lightly. I don't think they should take SMU lightly. It's still someone on their schedule and their conference that they're going to have to play. But I think this is definitely a game that they can and should win. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So last year I was at the Liacouras Center when SMU came up to town, and they had Kendrick Davis, they had the Weathers brothers, they had a pretty solid team. Unfortunately, though, Temple beats them. That kind of burst SMU's bubble at the time. They were hanging right around the fringes of making the tournament, and it was that loss that really ended their season and kind of took them out of tournament contention. So, unfortunately, because of that, Tim Jankovic got the axe. He's out. In comes Rob Lanier, who did 3 years at Georgia State, got into the tournament last year. They're actually very competitive with Gonzaga for most of that 1 seed versus 16 seed game. But he comes in after 3 years at Georgia State. Guys leave. Kendrick Davis goes out, who's the reigning player of the year in the conference. So is Zurich Phelps, averages almost 17 points a game, and is the leading scorer for this team. Brings in Samuel Williamson from Louisville, who's their leading rebounder. But this isn't a team that's going to block a ton of shots. They're sub 300 3-point percentage. Just not a very good team. And when you go to a conference like the American, I think it's kind of underrated and people can shit on a little bit, even though it's not as bad as it is. Bad as people make it out to be. There's a lot of transition here going on. He loses a premier elite player in the college game in Kendrick Davis, and kind of has to put the pieces together. So it's going to be a process. SMU, I think they, a number of years ago, they were making some tournaments. They had Larry Brown. Different era that we're in now. So Temple they really can't lose bad games. So I think they'll go into Dallas Fort Worth. I believe it's Fort Worth that they're in. I think they'll pick up a win here against an SMU team that just isn't that good. But they can't take any teams lightly now. They need all these games, but against a team that they don't block a lot of shots, not a ton of size on this team as well. I think this could be a big game for Jamil Reynolds. One that they need. I think they'll bounce back here. They've shown that in conference play that they're really not a fluke, and that I think that they're here to really play and compete. I think they'll definitely pick up a win here against SMU, and they're going to need it. And then I got another one. I believe it's Wichita State, maybe on Saturday coming up, but that's a whole other thing. But they have some games here where I think it's actually Memphis. But regardless, just talking about this game is a team that they should beat. I think they'll get it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things we talked about a little bit earlier in the season, where we got to see what they're made of. We got to see if they can have the mental fortitude to bounce back from a tough loss. They haven't really had, I mean, other than, and this was a really tough loss. The Memphis buzzer beater was a tough loss for sure, in a different way. But they bounced back nicely from that one, and they started winning games. And they had won 4 in a row to this point until they dropped to Houston. So let's see if they can bounce back after an emotional loss. And I think they can get it done, but they have to prove that they can be consistent because they have been the last, few weeks, and I'll give them absolute credit for that. But they have to be able to continue it now. So we'll see what happens. All right, we're gonna move on to a game that you are attending Wednesday night. DePaul versus Villanova at the Finn, the only home game for the Big Five in this Wednesday slate here, and a team that they lost to a few weeks ago. DePaul generally is not a good team. This year they're not awful. 137th in Ken Palm, and offense is probably their best trait. They're 83rd in 3-point percentage. They're 57th in free throw percentage, which is something that Villanova also does very, very well. They are 346th, however, in offensive or in opponents' offensive rebound percentage, which has been a little bit of an issue for Villanova. So maybe this will be a big boost for them in this game. They're also 59th in average length of possession, so they do like to get up and down a little bit. Like I said, they did lose to this DePaul team, so I think Villanova's gonna have some revenge on their mind, and they're at home. I think I'm gonna go with Villanova in this one, which is a little bit of, I guess, I don't know what the word for it is, but they haven't been playing very well lately. But we also talked about that they play better. They play against the good teams and they play well, but they can't close it out. But when they play these teams like this, usually they've been okay. This DePaul first game was the exception of that, but I do think that they can bounce back. I think they're playing well enough against the good teams, and now they'll get a little bit of a lighter team, and hopefully they'll be able to pounce. And I'm banking on that they will. How do you see this one playing out?
So I hope I'll be at this game. I haven't got an email back from Villanova, but I hope I'm at this
Okay.
game. Might
My
be a little
apologies.
tough. Brunson's getting his jersey retired. They're going to honor Jay Wright at halftime, so it's probably a hot ticket even amongst media as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they're going to pick up a win here. You mentioned that they're not very good in holding opponents to one shot on the offensive end. Well, Nova won this game on the boards, but they lost this game in as far as turnovers go. They're only 7 of 25 from 3 in this game. And offensively, again, they just kind of sputtered. DePaul made some big threes and some big shots late in this game that propelled him to a win. And Deshaun Nelson comes off the bench, 24 points and 8 rebounds to really give this DePaul team a lift and secure a win for them. Although they lost the first meeting in Chicago, I think they'll get a win here. You got to defend the 3-point line. They're, like you said, DePaul's a good free throw shooting team, which helped them 10-point lead and to close this one out at Wintrust Arena. But yeah, I'm going to go with Villanova here. They play the lesser teams in the Big East. That's what they've been picking up pretty much all their wins. So I'll take them to beat DePaul here on a night where they're going to honor 2 of their greatest ever. Now they're back at home. So yeah, I'm going to roll with Villanova here to get a revenge win over DePaul, but can't turn the ball over. So hopefully they can shoot better than 7 of 25 from 3 to win this one. But if not, we won this game on the boards last time. They're going to have to do it again. With all that being said, yes, I would take Villanova.
All righty. Well, there we go. That one was a Chicago team traveling to the Philadelphia area. Now we've got a Philadelphia team traveling to Chicago. St. Joe's taking on the Ramblers Wednesday night, 9:00. And this Ramblers team, though they've been playing a little bit better lately, still not a good team. 234th in Ken Palm. This is a stat for you, and we have talked about this before, I believe, when they played LaSalle. 358th in turnover percentage, which is up from 362nd where they were the last time we talked about these Ramblers team. Reminder, there's only 363 teams in Division I college basketball, so they're still really, really, really bad at taking care of the basketball. And I know St. Joe's isn't great, but they're not that bad. However, this Ramblers team does do some things pretty well. 37th in effective field goal percentage and 23rd in 2-point percentage. So pretty good things there in offense. One thing they don't do well, 276 in offensive rebound percentage, which hopefully will be a remedy for the St. Joe's team because they were getting killed on the offensive boards against LaSalle. So hopefully this can, be a way to clean that up a little bit. Listen, we talked about a few episodes ago that LaSalle game had a 3-game stretch here where they were playing teams that they should beat. They beat the first one. They lost the second one this past Sunday. Now they've got the third one against Loyola Chicago. And I do think they will win this game. They did a lot of things well against LaSalle, but they did some things really bad, and that cost them the game, such as 3-point percentage, free throw percentage, offensive rebounds. And I think that this is a team that all of those things can go away against. Traveling will be something. This is pretty far travel for them, but I ultimately think that this is a game that they can definitely win. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a bounce back spot for St. Joe's. So the last time Loyola, we talked about them, they actually played St. Joe's at Hagan Arena, and
That's
St.
what I meant.
Joe's
Yes,
smashed them. It was
yes.
86-55, 19 turnovers for Loyola. Yes, they have been playing a little bit better. They almost beat Dayton. I was watching that game. I believe it was last week. Yeah, I think it was last week. Philip Alston banks in a three. Anthony Grant decides not to foul. Philip Alston, he decides not to foul up three. Philip Alston banks in a three with less than a second left to force the game to overtime. And unfortunately, they lost, but they hung right in there at Dayton against a team that a lot of people think still, even on a losing streak, can still win the A10. So the recipe's out there to beat them. You got to turn them over. Loyola also didn't shoot in every facet in this game. Free throw, field goal, 3-point. They didn't shoot very well. 14 of 30 from three for St. Joe's. Opposite side of things. And then Lynn Greer, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals. He had a good game. If there's any injury news we can find on him, we'll let you know. I would think that it's injury related if he didn't play down the stretch in that LaSalle game because he had been playing very well. I'm sure they would have wanted him out there. So I think that's something to keep an eye on if there's anything there. I don't know if it's just something that he couldn't finish the game with and that he'll be good to go. But if we can find out anything about that, we will definitely pass that along to you. But they're not a team that shoots well. I think their press is going to be good in this game. If you can do that 1-2-2 press that they have, I think that'll be good to kind of slow them down and force them into some turnovers. Because Braden Norris is a smaller guy. I referenced this the last time we talked about him. He's only like a 6-foot point guard. And if you're going to put Rasheer Fleming out there with great activity and his length and his athleticism, it could bother him a little bit and force him into some turnovers. So I think the press is going to be big here in this game, but got to turn him over. And then also for Loyola, Philip Alston's been very, very good this year. What a find he's been coming in from D2. I believe it was Cal University of PA or IUP. He was at one of those schools in PA, but he was a D2 player. He makes the move and he's been so you're going to have to stop him, keep him at bay a little bit, but it's the turnover team. If you can turn over this team a lot, they're going to win, and I think that they will. And as you mentioned, they had a 3-game stretch of teams that they should beat in the Hawks, and I think they'll go 2 or 3 here. I think they'll pick up a win at Loyola. Shout out to Sister Jean. I know she'll probably be at the game, so shout out to her. But unfortunately, I think she's going to be watching the Hawks. Another W in the win column and making that 2 of their last 3 for them. So I think the Hawks will win here.
And that would also make it 6 of their last 8, which is still really, really impressive despite their damn good. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I believe after or before the LaSalle game, they were 6th in the A10 standings. I'm not sure where they ended up after. I didn't look after that, and I should have. But the fact that they're still, they're not right now. They're not scheduled to play in one of those first games like they have been the last few years, especially last year when they played LaSalle. Good on them. They're improving. They played a lot better on the stretch here. Hopefully they can continue that against Loyola, but also against some of the better teams too when they have to face them in the last few games of the season. We're really coming down to it though. We're recording this on February 7th. This is coming out February 8th. That means we are about 32 days away from Selection Sunday, something like that. Maybe I'll have to check my math, but it's crazy. We are getting there. It's a great time of year. Very, very excited and very, very thankful that you guys are tuning in. So thank you very much for doing that. We very much appreciate your support. As always, make sure you check us out on YouTube. Make sure you check us out on our socials, Twitter and Instagram at Big5Pod. Make sure you store audio only versions, I almost said Apple Podcast and Spotify. And that's pretty much all I got. Any last thoughts here before we sign off?
No, I'm all good. It should be a good slate of games. It's going to be a lot to watch tomorrow. Hopefully, I can get into Villanova, but if not, I'll do my best. I'm sure you will as well to provide some updates. So we're getting down to it. It's crazy, but time flies. They say time flies when you're having fun. I'm sure having a lot of fun, and we're right in the thick of things as far as college basketball season, and we will have a bracket in our hands before you know it.
And when we do, we're going to have to do an episode about that, even though I'm not sure if there'll be a Big 5 team there. I am praying that there will be, but regardless, we're gonna keep it going throughout the tournament. But yeah, very exciting times here and having a lot of fun. So can't complain about that. All right, well that's all we got for this one. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in and listening and all of that. following along. Definitely be sure to follow along with our tweets from these games. Obviously, we're not at these games unless Copestick does get into the Villanova game, but we are going to still have updates for you on our Twitter. So definitely tune in for that, and we'll see you at our weekend preview.